My name is Lucy Walker. I'm 29 years old, and on Christmas morning, my mother slapped me because I asked why my younger sister had received nearly $15,000 in gifts while I had been given nothing. 3 weeks earlier, Mom had sent a message to our family group chat saying, "No presents this year, we're focusing on gratitude, not material things." I believed her. I even transferred $800 to cover Christmas dinner because she claimed Dad's retirement account had been temporarily frozen. Then my sister began opening boxes. First came a brand new iPhone, then a $6,000 designer handbag. Finally, she opened a velvet case containing a diamond ring large enough to catch the light from every window in the room. She laughed, filmed herself crying, and told her followers she had the most generous family in Virginia. I sat beside the tree with an empty lap. When the final box was opened, I looked at my mother and asked, "What about me?" Her smile vanished. "You're almost 30, she said. "Stop embarrassing yourself." I reminded her that I had paid for dinner and helped cover the house, but the slap came so quickly that my head turned sideways. My father stared into his coffee. My sister kept recording. Nobody defended me. I stood up, opened my phone, and saw the notification I had scheduled for Christmas morning. Final audit package ready for release. My mother believed she had humiliated the daughter who still needed her approval. She had forgotten that I was also the woman whose money, credit, signature, and silence were supporting their entire lifestyle. Before I tell you what happened after I pressed that button, tell me where you're watching from and what the weather is like there. I want to know just how far this Christmas story can travel. For most of my childhood, my mother described my sister as the light of the family and me as the dependable one. Those words sounded harmless until I understood what they meant. Madison was allowed to shine. I was expected to keep the electricity running. She was 3 years younger than me, charming enough to make adults forgive her before she apologized. She could abandon a job, damage a borrowed car, insult someone at dinner, or forget an important birthday. And Mom would explain that she was sensitive, ambitious, overwhelmed, or misunderstood. When I made one mistake, it became proof that something was wrong with my character. At 22, I earned a degree in forensic accounting and began investigating financial irregularities at nonprofit organizations. I spent my workdays tracing fake vendors, inflated invoices, missing grants, and charitable funds diverted toward private lifestyles. I was good at identifying patterns because I had grown up inside one. Madison entered luxury real estate after dropping out of college. Her social media showed rooftop dinners, designer clothes, hotel suites, expensive cars, and carefully staged success. It did not show that Mom paid her phone bill, Dad covered her insurance, and I handled every emergency that followed when their accounts ran low. The requests started small. Dad needed a water heater. Mom needed a short-term loan before a charity gala. Madison needed money for a real estate licensing fee. Each time, Mom promised repayment and framed any hesitation as selfishness. "You're the stable one, Lucy. You don't have children. You earn more. Family helps family." By 27, I had become the invisible financial structure beneath their lives. I paid overdue property taxes, guaranteed the lease on Madison's luxury SUV, and organized the bookkeeping for Mom's nonprofit, the Heritage Women Foundation. I also opened an emergency business credit line after Mom promised it would be restricted to legitimate foundation events. My fiancé, Caleb Brooks, was the first person to ask why every family crisis ended with my bank account. Caleb was an architect who restored historic buildings. He never ordered me to cut off my family or pretended I was always right. He asked careful questions and waited while I struggled to answer them. We met during an investigation into a mishandled library restoration grant, and 2 years later, we were engaged. Caleb knew I helped my family, but even he did not know how much. I had never added it up because part of me still believed that if I became useful enough, Mom might eventually look at me the way she looked at Madison. The first warning arrived in early December when my banking app reported a $6,248 charge at a designer boutique in Washington, D.C. The purchase had been made using the emergency foundation card I had guaranteed. I called Mom immediately. She claimed the purchase was for donor relations, but when I asked which donor required a $6,000 handbag, she became defensive. "Not every relationship can be documented in a spreadsheet," she said. I reminded her that charitable spending had to be documented. She admitted she had used foundation money temporarily and promised to replace it after the next gala. When I demanded that she return the item, she accused me of caring more about rules than relationships and hung up. That evening, Caleb and I reviewed the account. The handbag was only the beginning. There was an expensive phone, payments to a private jeweler, restaurant bills, a car detailing service, and a transfer marked Brand Consulting to a company registered in Madison's name. The total was nearly $20,000. "Did your mother tell you about any of this?" Caleb asked. I shook my head. "Then stop looking at this like a daughter," he said. "Look at it like an investigator." I started with transaction records. Every charge carried a timestamp, merchant code, location, and authorization trail. The designer purchase and electronics charge came from the card assigned to Mom. The jewelry payment had been split into two smaller transactions, likely to avoid an automatic review. The transfer to Madison's company interested me most. MW Signature Living LLC had invoiced the foundation for digital outreach and donor engagement. The invoice claimed Madison had produced a 6-week educational campaign for young women entering the workforce. I checked the foundation's website, newsletters, board reports, archived pages, and social media. No campaign existed. The document metadata showed that the invoice had been created on Mom's home computer 2 days after payment was issued. Madison was listed as the vendor, but the file author was Diane Walker, my mother. She had manufactured an invoice to transfer charity money to my sister. On December 10th, Madison posted a private story showing a velvet jewelry box with the caption, "Manifestation works when your mother understands luxury." She deleted it 20 minutes later, but I captured a screenshot. 2 days afterward, Mom announced that there would be no Christmas presents because our family supposedly needed to focus on gratitude. I looked at the jewelry invoice while rereading her message. Caleb found me after midnight with 3 monitors open and a legal pad covered in notes. "You already know what happened," he said. I told him I knew only what the records suggested. He reminded me I did not need courtroom language with him. "She bought Madison Christmas gifts with foundation money and credit tied to my name," I finally admitted. "What are you going to do?" he asked. I wanted to confront her immediately, but I knew how it would end. Madison would cry, Dad would request peace, Mom would accuse me of jealousy, and everyone would discuss my reaction instead of their actions. Caleb told me not to give them an emotional response they could use. Give them facts. The next morning, I requested all invoices, board approvals, vendor agreements, and reimbursements associated with the emergency card. The outside bookkeeper sounded nervous and explained that Mom had told staff those records were being handled internally by Madison. I learned Madison had been listed as a communications consultant since October and paid $4,000 per month. The contract required 2 board signatures, but only Mom's appeared. Madison had received $12,000 before the Christmas shopping even started. During that same quarter, the foundation had rejected 7 transportation and childcare applications because it claimed funding was limited. One woman had requested $900 to repair the car she needed to reach work. Mom denied that request while spending nearly 7 times as much on Madison's handbag. At that moment, the excuse I had built around my mother finally collapsed. This was not ordinary parental favoritism. It was theft disguised as family loyalty. I continued digging and discovered that my parents' impressive Richmond home was not theirs. It was a furnished historic rental costing $8,000 per month. I had co-signed the lease after Dad claimed they needed temporary housing while selling their old property, but that house had never been listed. Rent was being covered through transfers from the foundation's administrative reserve and withdrawals from my personal credit line. I contacted the bank and learned that I could freeze the accounts, revoke cards, dispute personal expenses, and request a forensic review. I did not act immediately because I wanted enough evidence to prevent Mom from claiming a misunderstanding. I contacted Dr. Evelyn Ross, an ethics specialist and member of the Foundation's board. I explained that I had identified restricted funds, unsupported vendor payments, and credit misuse totaling at least $38,000. She instructed me to preserve everything, prepare an encrypted audit package, and avoid using Foundation email. 3 board members were traveling until December 26th, so she could not assemble the full committee before Christmas. I organized statements, invoices, metadata, lease documents, screenshots, messages, and a voice recording in which Mom said, "This foundation exists because of me. Madison's image supports mine. Don't create trouble over technical details." I scheduled the package to reach the board, outside counsel, the bank, and a guarantor protection team at 10:30 on Christmas morning unless I canceled it. "Why 10:30? Caleb asked. "Mom opens gifts at 10, I replied. "And if she gives Madison those items in front of you, then Christmas becomes the last day she controls the story." Christmas morning began with Mom acting like a woman in a commercial. She wore a cream cashmere dress and moved through the rented house carrying cinnamon coffee in gold-rimmed cups. A fire burned beneath the stone mantel. Music played softly. Madison had already positioned a phone tripod near the tree. Caleb and I arrived at 9:45 with a homemade breakfast casserole and a framed photograph for Dad. We had respected Mom's no gifts rule, although I had quietly purchased practical items for 2 children sponsored by the Foundation's holiday program. Mom kissed Caleb on the cheek and gave me a quick inspection. "You wore black on Christmas?" "It's dark green." "Well, it photographs black." That was her first criticism of the day. Under normal circumstances, I would have spent the next hour wondering whether I should have changed. This time, I simply handed her the casserole. Dad was sitting near the window. Thomas Walker had once filled every room he entered. As a hotel executive, he could resolve staff disputes, negotiate contracts, and calm furious guests without raising his voice. At home, however, he had gradually surrendered every decision to Mom. He hugged me and said, "Let's have a peaceful day." Peaceful was the word he used whenever he wanted me to absorb an injury quietly. Madison arrived 30 minutes late wearing a white fur-trimmed coat and carrying nothing. She walked directly to the tree, kissed Mom, and asked whether the lighting was good enough for video. I saw 3 large boxes behind the armchair. Mom noticed me looking. "Those are promotional samples." "From whom?" She smiled. "It's Christmas, Lucy. Try not to audit the decorations." At 10:15, Mom announced that she had changed her mind about gifts. "Only a few small things," she said. "Madison has had such a difficult year." Madison placed herself in front of the camera. Dad stared at the floor. Caleb sat beside me, his knee touching mine. The first box contained the iPhone. Madison screamed, hugged Mom, and immediately began describing its camera features to her viewers. The second box held the Bellavere handbag. I recognized the gold clasp from the boutique invoice. $6,248, purchased with a card connected to a charitable foundation. Madison pressed the bag against her chest. "Mom, this is insane." "You deserve to look successful," Mom said. The third box was smaller. Inside was the diamond ring. Madison began crying. Mom cried with her. Dad gave a weak smile. The livestream comments moved rapidly across the screen. "Best mom ever. This family is goals. You deserve everything." I looked beneath the tree. There was nothing with my name on it. I had known what I would probably see. I had studied the receipts. I had prepared for the performance. Yet knowledge did not make the moment painless. For one dangerous second, I was 8 years old again, watching Madison open the art set I had asked for because Mom said she was more naturally creative. I was 16, working a weekend job while Madison received a car for improving one grade. I was 24, being told there was no money to celebrate my promotion while Mom financed Madison's birthday trip to Miami. The pain was not about receiving an object. It was the public declaration that one daughter deserved abundance while the other existed to finance it. Madison turned the camera toward me. "Lucy, say hi. Aren't these amazing?" Mom's expression warned me to cooperate. I heard my own voice ask, "What about me?" The room changed immediately. Madison lowered the phone slightly. Dad looked toward the kitchen. Mom's face tightened. "What did you say?" she asked. "You told us there would be no gifts." Madison just opened an iPhone, a $6,000 bag, and a diamond ring. "What about me?" Mom laughed once sharply. "You cannot be serious. I'm asking a question. You're a grown woman. So is Madison. She needs support for her career. And I don't? You have a salary. You have Caleb. You've always been capable of taking care of yourself." "That doesn't explain why you lied," Dad murmured. "Lucy, not today." I looked at him. "When would be better?" Mom stepped closer. "Do not ruin your sister's Christmas because you're jealous." "I'm not jealous of the gifts. I'm asking why they were purchased through the foundation." Madison's smile vanished. The live stream was still running. Mom glanced at the phone and then back at me. "Turn that off." Madison reached for the screen, but comments were already appearing. "What foundation? Wait, what does she mean? Is this charity money?" Mom lowered her voice. "You don't know what you're talking about. I know the handbag was charged to the emergency credit facility on December 7th. The phone was purchased 2 days later. The ring payment was split between the foundation card and a transfer to Madison's consulting company." Dad stood up. "What consulting company?" Mom ignored him. I continued. "I know Madison received $12,000 for a campaign that never existed. I know the house rent is being paid from administrative reserves. I know you used the credit line I guaranteed after promising it was restricted to emergency event expenses." "Stop," Mom said. Madison finally ended the live stream. Mom moved so close that I could smell her perfume. "You came into my home on Christmas and accused me of stealing because your sister received gifts? This isn't your home. It's an $8,000 a month rental. And I'm listed as guarantor." Her hand struck my face before I saw it rise. The sound silenced the room. My cheek burned. My head turned. Caleb stood instantly, but I raised one hand to stop him. I did not want Mom rewriting the scene as a confrontation between men. Dad whispered, "Diane." That was all. He did not move toward me. He did not demand an apology. He did not even put down his coffee. Mom looked briefly shocked by what she had done, but pride arrived before remorse. "You pushed me," she said. I touched my cheek and looked around the room. Madison held her diamond ring. Dad stood frozen. Mom waited for me to cry, shout, or beg. Instead, I opened my phone. The screen showed 10:29. 1 minute remained before the audit package was released. Mom saw the countdown but did not understand it. "What are you doing?" "I'm making sure this is the last Christmas you buy with my silence." At 10:30, the screen changed. "Package delivered to Executive Board, Outside Counsel, Credit Review, and Guarantor Protection Team." I pressed 3 additional buttons. All authorized cards were frozen. The automatic transfer covering the house lease was canceled. My guarantee on Madison's vehicle entered formal dispute review. Mom's phone began ringing before I lowered mine. The first call came from Dr. Evelyn Ross. Mom stared at the screen as though the name itself had betrayed her. She rejected the call. It rang again immediately. Then Dad's phone began vibrating. Madison's business account displayed a fraud review notification because the foundation had challenged the consulting payments. The dealership financing her luxury SUV sent an alert stating that the guarantor had disputed continued liability. The property management company emailed Mom requesting updated payment authorization for the January lease. Within 90 seconds, the room full of luxury gifts felt less like Christmas and more like a crime scene. Mom pointed at me. Undo it. No. You have no right. The credit is in my name. You gave us permission. I gave the foundation limited permission for documented emergency expenses. You used it for personal gifts, rent, Madison's fake consulting contract, restaurants, and image management. Madison stepped forward, still wearing the ring. My contract isn't fake. What work did you perform? I promoted the foundation. Show me one deliverable. I posted about women supporting women. You posted one photograph from the gala. The caption advertised your real estate listings. Her face flushed. That still brought attention. You were paid $4,000 a month. That was Mom's decision. Exactly. Dad sat down slowly. Diane, how much money are we talking about? Mom snapped. Do not interrogate me in front of them. The board is about to interrogate all of us, I said. His eyes moved toward me. All of us? The house lease lists you and Mom as occupants. Several reimbursements went through a joint account. Whether you knew where the money came from is something the board and outside counsel will determine. Dad went pale. For years, he had treated silence as neutrality. Now he was discovering that silence could leave a paper trail. Mom answered the next call and put it on speaker by mistake. Diane, Dr. Ross said, the executive committee has reviewed preliminary evidence supplied by Lucy. Effective immediately, your authority to access foundation accounts, direct staff, contact donors, or authorize expenditures is suspended. Mom lunged to turn off the speaker, but I had already heard enough. This is outrageous, she said. Lucy is acting out because of a family disagreement. This is not a family disagreement, Dr. Ross replied. The documents show unsupported payments to a company controlled by your daughter, use of restricted funds for personal merchandise, and possible misrepresentation to the board. Those items were donor development expenses. A diamond ring was donor development? Mom looked at Madison. Dr. Ross continued. An emergency board meeting will take place tomorrow at 11. Outside counsel has instructed staff to preserve all devices and records. Do not delete anything. You're taking the word of a jealous child over the founder of this organization? I'm taking the word of bank records. The call ended. Madison began crying, but unlike the tears she had filmed 10 minutes earlier, these were angry and uncontrolled. You destroyed everything, she said to me. No, I stopped paying for it. My clients saw that live stream. You left the camera running. You knew it was running. I also knew you were displaying property purchased with charity money to thousands of people. Mom turned toward her. Delete the video. It was live. People recorded it. As if summoned by the words, Madison's phone flooded with notifications. Clips of the slap were already circulating. Someone had added captions. Another account had matched the handbag to her earlier manifestation post. A local nonprofit watchdog page asked whether Heritage Women Foundation donations had financed influencer content. Madison opened her mouth, but no sound came out. Caleb moved beside me. Lucy, we should leave. Mom blocked the doorway. You are not walking out after setting fire to this family. I'm not the one who stole money. I built that foundation from nothing. And then you treated it like your wallet. I built your career too. I almost laughed. You told everyone my work was boring. You refused to attend my certification ceremony because Madison had a photo shoot. I raised you. That does not make my identity, credit, labor, or income your property. Dad finally spoke louder. Diane, let her go. Mom turned on him. Now you find a voice? His face changed. Years of humiliation seemed to pass across it, but I felt no sudden admiration for him. He had found courage only when consequences reached his own name. I asked you where the rent money came from, he said. You said consulting income. It was temporary. You told me the foundation board approved Madison's contract. They would have approved it. That isn't the same thing. Madison pointed at Dad. Don't act innocent. You love the house. You loved telling your golf friends we lived here. He flinched. She was right. Mom had directed the fraud, but Dad had enjoyed every benefit while avoiding every question. His passivity was not innocence. It was participation with plausible deniability. Mom tried another strategy. Her shoulders lowered. Her eyes filled. Her voice became soft. "Lucy, sweetheart, we can fix this privately." There it was. The version of her I had spent my life trying to reach. "I was under pressure," she continued. "The foundation needed visibility. Madison needed help establishing herself. Your father was struggling after retirement. I made imperfect choices, but everything I did was for this family. You slapped me." Her eyes moved away. "I lost control. You stole money from women who needed transportation and childcare. I was going to replace it." "With what?" She did not answer. I stepped closer, not aggressively, but close enough that she could no longer pretend not to hear me. "You did not buy Madison gifts because she needed them. You bought them because her image made you feel powerful. You did not ask me for help because I was loved. You asked because I was useful. Every time I solved a problem, you created a larger one because you believed I would protect the family from consequences. I am your mother. And I was your daughter. You turned me into your emergency fund." Mom's expression hardened again. "You'll regret humiliating us." "I spent 20 years regretting every time I disappointed you. I'm done regretting the truth." I walked past her. Outside, the December air struck my face. My cheek still burned. Caleb followed without speaking until we reached the car. Then he asked, "Do you want to go to the police?" I looked back at the glowing windows of the house I had helped finance. "Not about the slap," I said, "but I'm cooperating with every financial investigation that follows." My phone rang before we left the driveway. It was the bank investigator assigned to the disputed credit facility. I answered. "Yes," I said. "I can verify that the purchases were unauthorized personal use. I also have written restrictions, invoices, account records, and messages from the authorized user." From inside the house, I heard Mom shout my name. I closed the car door. For the first time in my life, I did not turn around. The consequences arrived in layers, each exposing what my family had hidden beneath gala photographs, designer clothes, charity speeches, and staged success. 2 days after Christmas, the board removed Mom as executive director. She claimed the purchases were promotional investments, but outside counsel asked her to identify the charitable purpose of Madison's diamond ring. Mom said it had been intended for an auction. The jeweler produced documents proving it had been sized for Madison before purchase. That lie destroyed any chance of a quiet resignation. The board referred the records to state charity regulators and issued a public announcement about unauthorized expenditures. Mom's name disappeared from the foundation website she had treated like a monument. The organization survived because Dr. Ross secured emergency funding and hired an independent accounting firm. I helped separate legitimate programs from Mom's personal spending, and the transportation applications previously rejected were reopened. 3 women received assistance within weeks. I refused payment because I wanted the money returned to the people from whom it had been taken. Madison's collapse was faster and more public. The live stream clip reached local news after online investigators connected her gifts to the foundation review. 2 luxury developers suspended their listing agreements. A handbag company canceled an influencer partnership. Her brokerage placed her on leave after discovering that she had invoiced a charity through an undisclosed company. Madison called me 43 times in 1 week. I answered once. She demanded that I release a statement saying she had not known the payments were improper. I asked whether she had performed the work listed on her invoices. She said she had intended to. I reminded her that she had already accepted $12,000. She accused me of wanting her to fail. "No," I replied. "I wanted you to stop making your life my responsibility." Then she revealed what she truly expected from me. "But you always fix things." I told her I used to. When she asked what she was supposed to do, I advised her to return the ring and handbag, repay the consulting fees, cooperate with investigators, and find work that did not depend on pretending to be wealthy. She called me cruel and hung up. The ring was returned 3 days later. The boutique refused the handbag because she had already used it online. Dad sold his vintage watches to cover part of the restitution. Madison surrendered the SUV after failing to refinance it without my guarantee. Once I stopped the automatic withdrawals, my parents could not prove enough income to keep the historic rental. The property manager gave them 30 days to leave. Mom told relatives I had made my parents homeless at Christmas, but the story changed when Aunt Rebecca called me directly. I explained that I had canceled unauthorized withdrawals from my own credit line, not evicted them from a home they owned. I sent her the foundation's public statement. Soon, relatives began comparing experiences. Mom had borrowed money from cousins for fake medical emergencies, asked an uncle to fund a scholarship that never appeared in reports, and persuaded Aunt Rebecca to pay for Madison's photography by promising grant reimbursement. The family group chat Mom had controlled for years became a collection of questions she could not answer. Dad called me in January and admitted he should have stopped her. I told him he had known enough to ask questions. He claimed he had been trying to keep the family together. "No," I said. "You were avoiding becoming the person she was angry with." After a long silence, he admitted that was fair. He moved into a small apartment while Mom stayed with Madison, an arrangement that quickly became miserable. Dad asked to meet, and I agreed under strict conditions. I would provide no money, contact no investigator on his behalf, soften no finding, and accept no conversation blaming Mom's actions on stress, age, or my jealousy. He accepted. Mom did not. The night before my February wedding, she sent a final message saying a mother could forgive many things, but public betrayal changed a family forever. She hoped I would one day understand what I had destroyed. I replied, "I understand exactly what I ended. My participation." Then I blocked her. Caleb and I married in the restored reading room of the historic library where we had met. There were 26 guests, no sponsored decorations, no family live stream, and no performance designed to impress strangers. Dad attended alone and sat in the second row rather than beside me. He had begun therapy and sold personal assets to help restore the missing money, but accountability did not instantly rebuild trust. Mom and Madison were not invited. I worried their absence would dominate the day, but it did not. Caleb's sister adjusted my veil, Aunt Rebecca gave a reading, and Dr. Ross toasted the courage required to protect an institution even when the person harming it shared your name. After the ceremony, Caleb asked whether I regretted pressing the button. I considered the question honestly and told him I regretted waiting so long. Months later, Mom signed a restitution agreement, surrendered her foundation role permanently, and avoided a harsher legal outcome only by cooperating after the evidence became impossible to deny. Once the galas, donors, status, and influence disappeared, most of her social circle vanished too. Madison left luxury real estate, sold the possessions she had displayed online, and accepted an administrative job at a property management company outside Richmond. We did not reconcile. She sent an apology through Dad, but most of it explained how Mom had influenced her. I said I would consider contact only when Madison could describe her own choices without assigning responsibility to someone else. That day may come, or it may not. Forgiveness and access are not the same thing. For years, I thought setting a boundary meant delivering a dramatic speech and walking away. I learned that the real boundary comes afterward. It is the call you do not answer, the money you do not transfer, the excuse you refuse to repeat, and the problem you allow another adult to solve. My mother's true punishment was not losing her position or expensive home. Madison's was not losing contracts, a car, or designer gifts. Their real consequence was losing the person who had protected them from reality. Once I stepped away, every bill carried its true cost. Every lie required another lie, and every relationship had to survive without gifts, influence, or financial leverage holding it together. That was when I understood why Mom had reacted so violently to one simple question. What about me? Threatened the system she had created. In that system, Madison received because she represented the family's image. Dad stayed silent because silence protected his comfort. Mom controlled because power made her feel indispensable. I paid because usefulness was the only role that earned me temporary peace. The moment I questioned what I deserved, the arrangement became visible. I once believed being dependable was proof of strength. Sometimes it was, but strength without boundaries becomes an invitation for exploitation. Generosity without accountability becomes funding. Loyalty without respect becomes captivity. Family should never require one person to shrink so another can appear brighter. A parent does not earn unlimited access to an adult child's money, credit, labor, home, or emotional energy simply because they raised that child. Gratitude is not permanent debt. Love is not a financial authorization form. Forgiveness does not require returning to the place where you were harmed. I still remember the empty space beneath the Christmas tree, Madison holding the ring, Dad staring into his coffee, and the moment after Mom slapped me when everyone waited for me to collapse into my old role. Instead, I opened my phone. That action did not magically heal me. It did something more important. It returned responsibility to the people who had spent years handing it to me. Today, Caleb and I live in a smaller house than the one my parents pretended to own. We budget honestly, give only what we can afford, and support local employment programs through transparent accounts. Every December, I anonymously purchase one practical gift for a woman rebuilding her financial independence. The first year, I paid $900 toward a nursing assistant's car repair, the same amount Mom's foundation had once claimed it could not spare. That gift meant more than every designer box beneath my mother's tree. I did not end my family's lifestyle because I received no Christmas present. I ended it because their lifestyle depended on fraud, favoritism, fear, and my continued cooperation. Asking, "What about me?" was never greed. It was the first honest question of my life. Standing up after the slap was my answer.
Thank you for watching the story until the very end. This video is completely fictional and was created only for entertainment, education, and dramatic reflection. We hope it reminds you that sometimes the greatest lesson after betrayal is learning to stop giving people the benefit of the doubt when their actions have already shown you the truth. Your peace becomes stronger when you finally believe what their behavior has been telling you all along.